Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Committee of Adjustment. This meeting is to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. Please keep in mind that the intent of this process is to review the proposal that is before us, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the committee, after consultation with the Secretary-Treasurer, will set a new hearing date. No further notice will be provided unless there are changes to the application. In order to conduct an effective and efficient hearing, we have adopted the following process. The owner and authorized agent will be given the opportunity, if so desired, to briefly explain to us the basis of their application and answer any questions that may arise out of the hearing. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for this presentation. You will need to state your full name and address for the record, and any materials submitted to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All persons attending the hearing who wish to support or oppose the application will also have to state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make that presentation. All necessary questions and remarks will be directed to the chairperson of the committee, and any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will also be at the discretion of the committee. If there are several speakers sharing the same point of view, we do ask that a spokesperson be elected to represent the group's opinion. We do want to hear the views of everyone in attendance. However, covering the same points will not advance your case. The owner or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to comments and concerns made by interested parties and answers any questions for the committee members. If the owner or agent has any concerns found in staff report, particularly in any proposed conditions, at that time it will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Once the committee makes an oral decision, any person desiring a copy must file with the Secretary-Treasurer at this meeting a written request for notice of the decision. A green sheet is provided for this purpose in the back of the room. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the local planning appeal tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of any appeal. Written notices of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance applications and 15 days for consent applications to the applicant, owner, agent, and any other person who has filed a written request for such a notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the local planning appeal tribunal, and the last day to do so will be listed on and noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant through written correspondence. People attending this committee meeting are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, the town staff, and other people in attendance tonight. Tonight's meeting will be video recorded and available for future viewing on the town's YouTube channel. We do ask that you maintain your cellular phones on silent or switched off during the meeting, as they do tend to interfere with the audio system. Thank you. We have no regrets this evening. Do I have any declaration of pecuniary interests? I see none. Thank you. At this moment, I will be taking requests for deferral or withdrawal of any applications. Okay, I see none. Thank you. So we will proceed with the first item on our agenda, which is CAV 006 of 2019 at 449 Tennyson Drive. Good evening.
Good evening, committee members, Madam Chair. I'm Graham Barrett, agent for the owners of 449 Tennyson.
Good evening, Mr. Barrett. Are there any members in the audience who are here in attendance for CAV 006 of 2019 at 449 Tennyson Drive? I see none. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett. This is your time. This is for a new proposed construction. We do have one letter of opposition and a letter of support on file.
Right, so I'm here to request one minor variance from the zoning bylaw in order to permit construction of a new home, as you said. We're requesting a residential floor area ratio of 44%, where the bylaw sets a max at 41. This amounts to a difference of 20.66 square meters, or approximately 222 square feet. We've worked closely with town staff throughout this process and made several requested changes along the way. We were originally proposing a floor area ratio of 45.2%, but have reduced it. The designers also made adjustments to the look of the front of the house, as noted in the comments, resulting in improved massing and transition between adjacent properties. We have appreciated the feedback from urban design and planning staff for the last couple of months. This is a good-sized 4-bedroom with 1 extra bedroom in the basement home for this area of Oakville. Excuse me. There are several other new homes which are similar in size and/or character on this block of Tennyson. I have a few photos here. Pardon the glare on that, but that's just down the street, as are these two, and that as well. I hand-delivered a letter explaining our proposal and offering to chat if any neighbors had any questions or concerns. I went to several homes on Tennyson, in 9 of them, in fact. I only heard back from 422, and they are in support. I believe that's the letter that I sent in already. We also have been in contact with the owner of 419 Tennyson, and she has provided a letter of support. I emailed it in on the weekend, but...
Yes, we have it on record. Thank you.
Okay, great. I am aware of the 1 letter of opposition which you mentioned. That was sent in from 432 Tennyson, and I wish they'd reached out to me directly, because I did drop a letter at their place. We could have had a conversation before tonight's meeting. This is actually 432 Tennyson right here on your screen at the moment. I do appreciate their concerns about overbuilding in the neighborhood, but this home was approved for a minor variance permitting 43.31% floor area in June of 2017. We're proposing a difference of approximately 3 square meters. They are at 303.29 meters squared. We are at 306.34. So we're of the opinion that this will not affect the feel and characteristics of the street, as mentioned in the letter, nor will it set a precedence allowing for larger homes. And as we're all aware, these proposals are judged independently and on their own merits, not based on what the neighbors have been allowed to do. So we've worked closely with town staff to make sure our proposal has merit and is reasonable. That being said, the decision at 432 Tennyson is an excellent example of what is happening in the area, as our proposal is very close in terms of size. So this is a fairly traditional style home with a layout and modern features that are desirable to homeowners at this time. It will fit in well with the changing character of this neighborhood. Variance is minor in the context of this property and this area. It's very close to what was approved in our opposition's property. And the proposal is in keeping with the intent of both the zoning bylaw and the official plan. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Are there any questions of Mr. Barrett at this time? I see none. If you're satisfied with the conditions that town staff has put in their report, we can take this matter into committee.
The conditions are standard, right? 2 years and substantially in accordance? Yes, of course.
Okay, members of the committee, I'm ready for a motion. I did. There was no one here, yeah.
Madam Chair, thank you. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I know that they're in support of.
Put your mic on, your microphone.
Test, test.
Thank you. All right, not a problem. Starting back again then. Madam Chair, again, having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the town is in support of this variance. Also taking into account what Mr. Barrett has said this evening. I do note that, as he did mention, there were 2 letters of support and 1 letter objecting to it. I have to admit that Mr. Barrett sort of stole my thunder on the dealing with the letter of objection. As we all know, it's not a question of absolutes, so I'm trying to measure. I didn't even realize it was 33.31, but 33.31 to 34 is not really an argument, and that seemed to be the only argument that was put forward. We do take into account many other objective and subjective things in arriving at these decisions. So based on this, I find myself influenced primarily by the town and by Mr. Barrett's submission, and I'm going to put forward a motion in support of this variance as presented, subject to two conditions. The first condition, that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated January 9th, 2019. And the second condition, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of this decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. Your application has been approved. Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Great, thank you very much.
Can you take your photos on the side table? Just the 3 pictures of
Sure.
The next item on our agenda is CAV 010 of 2019 at 511 McDonald Road. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee.
Name and
There we
address.
go. My name is John Wilmot, 594 Chartwell Road, Suite 3, Oakville, and I am the agent for the owners.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Is there anyone here in attendance for CAV 010 of 2019 at 511 McDonald Road? Okay, I see none. Go ahead, Mr. Wilmot. The town is, as you know, is not in support of all your variances, so you will take us through your presentation.
Well, I think, thank you. I think that we concur, of course, with the 3 variances that they are in support of. We're prepared at this time, respectfully, to withdraw item number 4 and reduce the height. The primary reason for the increased height request was it's a very flat site, and we always have challenges with complicated grading designs. So we're asking for a little bit more to accommodate that. That said, we had some very brief correspondence with the planner, and felt that with some minor adjustments that won't change the design, we can lower the building and withdraw that variance. I think probably at this time I'd be happy to answer questions about the other variances if you like. I think it's fairly straightforward. And
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilmot. So we are removing variance number 4. Committee members, do you have any questions of Mr. Wilmot at this time? Mr. Talowski?
So, Mr. Wilmot, can you help me with both the variance on the floor area to lot ratio and the resulting design? I guess I can only describe my reaction to this design as very disappointing, that you've asked for 700 and 800 square feet additional, and you're basically presenting a 2-story box with, a side garage added onto it. I don't see any effort here to try to mitigate the impact of this additional size.
Okay, well, first of all, I think from a design point of view, the intent of it is to be a more formal house, to be a symmetrical house from the front. The clients requested that style of house from the onset. The box feeling, if you will, is something I don't share your opinion, but in terms of the style of the house, I think it's an elegant house. There's very similar styles along the street that are like that, so it fits in the context of the street. The coverage, which is an important factor in this, has been maintained. The extra volume, if you will, in a lot of ways is instigated in a way by the new bylaw and forcing less coverage and more second floor space. So part of it was to maintain our clients' design criteria, but I don't necessarily think a bigger volume is going to take away from the design. And I agree in some cases where you have different design styles that could mitigate the volume of it. Could be necessary, but I think on this street and with the setbacks and the elegance of the street, I think this one fits quite nicely. And certainly planning staff had no issues and concurred with that as well.
Are there any further questions? I see none. Okay. Mr. Romont, you're familiar with the conditions that town staff have suggested?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, committee members, are you ready for a proposal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, noting that the town staff was not in support of number 4, the maximum height variance, which the applicant has withdrawn. So thank you for taking that into consideration. As well, noting that there are no letters or emails in support of or in against this application. I am going to move that the application be approved as applied for, subject to the conditions, excuse me.
Standard condition.
Our standard condition as far as it being, can I do that?
The proposed construction
Yes.
be in general accordance with,
Where is it? Sorry, subject to the condition that the proposed construction be in general accordance with the site plan and elevations submitted, and subject to the condition that the approval will expire 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
very well, thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? All those opposed? Okay. Mr. Flemington, I'm assuming you passed the motion, so you're, yeah, so it's 3-2. Okay, Mr. Yes, John Fuller opposed. Mr. Wilmot, your application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is CAV 013 of 2019 at 235 Willow Ridge Court.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Ibtisam Mahrous, 353 Sprout Street, Milton.
You're going to have to speak into the mic because it's very difficult to hear you, Ms. Mahrous.
Okay.
Is there anyone here for CAV? Yes, that's her, yeah. Is there anyone here for CAV 013 of 2019 at 235 Willow Ridge Court? I see none. Ms. Mahrous, this is for a new home development?
Yes.
You're requesting a front yard variance.
Yes, we received our building permit and we started construction. And due to an error done by the surveyor in locating the house, we got an error for this corner. I'm not sure if it is clear. It's 24 centimeter by 1.16 meter. for a small triangle, which is on first floor only. Other than that, we are complying with the zoning bylaw provisions. So if you see this, it will be this corner, only this corner for the bay window. And the construction was done for the foundation, first floor, and partial second floor.
Very well, thank you. Are there any questions of Ms. Mahrous at this time? Okay, I see none. Town staff have recommended that your application be approved, and you're familiar with the conditions that they have put forth?
Yes.
Thank you. Members, I'm in your hands. Who would like to move a motion for this application? Mr. Tlowski, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll be happy to move approval of this application. I believe this is truly minor and an appropriate solution for a very unique lot. And I would make a motion to approve, subject to the two conditions that development proceed in general accordance with the drawings provided and that the building permit issue within 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tlowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is CAV 014 of 2019 at 149 Sandwell Drive. Good evening, Mr. Garrett, again.
Good evening again. Agent for the owner, 149 Sandwell.
Thank you. Once again, I'm surveying the room. Who is here in attendance for CAV 014 of 2019 at 149 Sandwell Drive? I see none. Mr. Barrett, this is for a new proposed cabana.
Yes, that's it. It's one minor variance in order to permit construction of a pool cabana. It's lot coverage of 25.71%, where the bylaw sets a max at 25. This is a difference of approximately 9 square meters. The house, which is currently under construction, is pretty much maxed out for coverage at 24.93%. The cabana was an afterthought, and a variance is required. Everything else on this property is in compliance. And similar to the last project, I dropped letters to a bunch of homes in the area, 8 of them in total, and received letters of support back from 3, which have been submitted. That's 150, 156, and 162 Sandwell.
Yes, we have those on record. Thank you.
Good, and staff comments are supportive, and we appreciate that. This is a very, very minor variance. Proposal passes the 4 tests. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Are there any questions of Mr. Barrett at this time? If you are ready to move a motion, I'm happy to take one. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the materials, undertaken my site visit, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the 4 tests of the Act. I'll put forward a motion of approval. This is a relatively minor addition to accommodate a shed in the rear yard that'll have no tangible impact to adjacent properties or on the streetscape. So I'll put forward that motion, noting that there were 3 emails provided in support of the application. The motion would be subject to 2 conditions, the first being that the cabana be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated January 4th, 2019, and that the approval expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where the building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Drive safe.
Good night. The next item on our agenda for tonight is CAV 016 of 2019 at 531 Esplanade.
Madam Chair.
Good
Committee.
evening. Your name and address for the record, please.
Tom McPherson, the owner of the property.
Mr. McPherson, thank you. Who is here for application CAV 016 of 2019 at 531 Esplanade? I see none. Sir, this is for a proposed expansion of the existing driveway. This is your time. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, we're looking to get we want to add on to our driveway here so that we're at a very long lane. I don't know if any of the committees had a chance to go down there. And the problem is there's a fire hydrant at the end of the lane that's all fenced on one side, and There's been quite a lot of cars that have taken off the side on the fire hydrant because they have to back up about, I guess, about 75 yards to get out of the driveway from the garage. So what we're trying to do is just be able to come into our driveway, make a U-turn on the area here, and be able to drive back out onto Howard Avenue.
Very well, thank you, sir. Are there any questions of Mr. McPherson at this time? I see none. If you're familiar with the conditions that town staff have proposed?
Yes.
Okay, and if you're amicable to these conditions, then we can take this matter into committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Charlebois, thank you.
Chair, it's just, yeah, okay, it's working. Again, having conducted my site visit, I did take a look at this and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report. I actually see that this makes a ton of sense. I do note that there have been no objections or letters of support from the public. However, I am influenced by just the practicality of this particular application. So I'm prepared to make a motion in support of the variance, finding that it does meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and making subject to 2 conditions: that the driveway be constructed in accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated January 4th, 2019, and further that the approval expires 2 years from the date of this decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda tonight is a CAV 017 of 2019 at 3025 Pine Glen Road. Good evening, sir. Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Roop Somalal, 5 Springhurst Avenue, Brampton.
Sorry, sir. Can you pronounce your last name again?
Somanlal?
Salman Lal.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is here in attendance for CAV 017 of 2019 at 3025 Pine Glen Road? I see none. Mr. Salman, we're aware that this is for the new proposed fire hall that's to be constructed. Are there any questions of Mr. Salman at this time? Or is there anything further that you'd like to add to the application, sir?
Not at this time.
Mr. Flemington, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town staff report, noting that it is in support of, also taking into account the presentation this evening and that there were no letters of support or opposition, I am prepared to move the motion that this application be approved as applied for, subject to the conditions that the fire hall be constructed in accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated January 4th, 2019, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is CAV 157 from 2018 at 123 Morden Road. This was deferred from December 18, 2018.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is David Capper with Glenn Schnarr and Associates. Our address is 10 Kingsbridge Garden Circle, Mississauga, Ontario, L5R 3K6. Appearing here on behalf of the owner of the property.
Good evening, Mr. Capper. Thank you. Is there anyone here in attendance for CAV 157 of 2018 at 123 Morden Road? I see none. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have prepared a presentation for this evening. I'm happy to walk through that with you very quickly. My apologies. I was under the impression we're going to use a computer, but we'll use the overhead.
was, yeah.
So are you seeing on your screens?
We did, but now it's switched off. I don't know where it went.
I'm happy to do both, but,
Hold on. Okay, they've brought it back, so.
okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we oh.
Okay, I have control. Thanks very much. So just a quick air photo of the subject property located on the east side of Morden Drive, 2 lots north of Lakeshore Road. With respect to the variance that's before you this evening, the application seeks an increase in the maximum residential floor area from a maximum of 37%, which is permitted in the zoning bylaw, to the proposed maximum of 38.84%. For the record, that results in a 19.22 square meter increase in floor area, or roughly 206 square feet. This is the site plan that is proposed. You'll note that there are 4 X's on this property, on the site plan, which show trees that are proposed to be removed. There's 2 in the rear yard and 2 in the front yard. This one is a function of the tree's health and its requirement to be removed. And this one is a function of the tree's location in proximity to the driveway. I do note also that there's a concrete shed that's shown in the rear yard that is to be removed. There were, at the last meeting this application was presented, there were 3 variances, and there was 1 member that was in attendance at that meeting. I did have correspondence and discussion with that member of the public the evening of December 12th. His concerns related to any potential removal of the hedgerow in the rear yard, which I can note that there's no proposed removal. And in fact, it's the client's intent to supplement plantings within that hedgerow to make it a little bit thicker. There was also concern with respect to the existing situation on the property with respect to the condition of the dwelling. And I assured him that given that the property was to be demolished, that would occur shortly after the approval and lapsing of the variance appeal period. In terms of the elevation that's proposed, the top image is the front elevation, whereas the rear image is the rear elevation, and you've got the 2 side elevations. And I think the 2 images that reflect more accurately the massing that is proposed are in these 2 renderings from each side of the dwelling. That concludes my presentation for this application. I'd be happy to answer any questions should there be any.
Thank you, Mr. Capper. Are there any questions of Mr. Capper at this time? I see none. Who's ready to move a motion if you're satisfied with the conditions that town staff has suggested?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are comfortable with the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tulowski, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Always happy to see the applications come back with no issues. Madam Chair, I'm satisfied that the requested variance is really nominal in nature, and the building shows an appropriate massing. So I'll be happy to move approval, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and note that there is no opposition to this application, and would move the approval subject to the conditions suggested by staff, which development proceed in general accordance with the drawings permitted, and that a permit issue within 2 years.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Tulowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you. And the last item on our agenda is another application deferred from December 18th of 2018, and that is CAV 164 of 2018 at 1453 Seagram Avenue. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Marin Zabzuni. I'm the agent for 1453 Seagram Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Zabzuni. Is there anyone here in attendance for CAV 164 of 2018 at 1453 Seagram Avenue? Okay, I see no one. Go ahead, sir. This is your time. This is an application for proposed new construction.
Yes, it's for a two-story dwelling. We have deferred from December in order to work more closely with city planning. We have met up with them in person even and removed the lot coverage variance from before. Also removed the side yard setback variance and have reduced the FSI gross area variance that we have here today. So we're asking for 37.91%, where the maximum allowed is 37%. And for the two-car garage, we're asking for 53.15 square meters, when maximum is 45 square meters. We're trying to do a design and house that fits the area. We have taken a drive and have been through the area. The owner has talked to the neighbors as well in order to design something that's accommodating or respectful for the community.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Zabzuni. We are always happy to see that people are working with town staff in order for us to see more favorable development of the proposed properties. Are there any questions of Mr. Zabzuni at this time? I see none. If you have no further thoughts to add and you're satisfied with the conditions that town staff has suggested, we're ready to take this into committee.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the materials, heard the comments from the proponent, and reviewed the staff report, and recalling upon previous discussions, I am satisfied that the modified variances with the eliminations and the reductions now satisfactorily address the four tests of the Act. They truly are minor in nature and will have minimal impact on adjacent property. So I'll put forward a motion of approval subject to the two standard conditions as articulated within the staff report. The first being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated December 19th, 2018. And the second being that the approval expire within 2 years of the date of the decision.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. We have meeting minutes to confirm from January the 29th of 2019. Who would like to move the minutes? Mr. Flemington would move them in. And then a motion for adjournment. Mr. Hardcastle. And the meeting is adjourned at 7:39. Thank you. Let's go home.